This is the Chairman's Countdown with your host, Zach Mottl, Chairman of the Coalition for a Prosperous America. Countdown with us as we explore trade, tariffs, and industrial strategy with the leaders driving America's prosperity and security.
Hello, I want to welcome you all to the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, along with my friend Chuck Benoit, who's the Trade Counsel for the Coalition for a Prosperous America, and we're coming to you right here on Home Talk USA Radio. Thanks for joining us today, but if you missed the show, you can stream it live at hometalkusa.com all across America. Chuck, good morning. Great to have you here today. We've got a special guest today, don't we?
Yes, great to be here. Thank you, Zach.
That's right. Yep. And we've got Congressman Daniel Webster. And Congressman Webster joins us from Florida's 11th Congressional District. His district is home to a strong manufacturing community and it spans right across Central Florida. Representative Webster has been a respected voice for Florida manufacturers, U.S. workers, and he's a champion for economic resilience. He serves on some key committees that advance infrastructure, manufacturing, and economic development priorities. Those impact his district, but also the nation. And here at the Coalition for a Prosperous America, we're so proud to partner with Congressman Webster and leaders like him to showcase how America can rebuild its industrial strength and make good jobs for everyday average Americans. We want their wages rising faster than costs, and making things is the best way to do that. Congressman, thank you for being here. You know, there's a major manufacturer in your district, and I would be remiss if I didn't start with them. Nucor Steel, they're one of America's biggest steel mills. They've got a major presence in your district. They're driving investment and steel making and jobs in Florida. What do you see going on at that factory?
Well, I think the key is we're trying to maintain steel production in the United States. For too long, we kind of packaged up our jobs and sent them elsewhere, thinking we were doing everybody a favor. We were doing no one a favor. We were losing our jobs, losing our economy, losing the base that we had. And so taking American jobs and shipping them overseas seemed to be a great thing at the time, but it was not. And so we're trying to gain them back, keep them back, and have a place for them to work.
Well, you're reading my talking points, it feels like, Congressman, because that's exactly how I feel. They're great jobs for good Americans. And, the data shows that. Chuck, we've done some research on steel and the kind of high-wage jobs and investment that this kind of investment creates. What does the research show about these jobs, and why are they so important, like the Congressman is saying?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they drive wages and they drive the cost, especially in steel, they drive the costs for everything else down, right? People think if we onshore, things are going to get more expensive, but that's just not the case. In fact, what we do is by building up our domestic capacity, especially in things like steel and aluminum, we're driving down the costs for all manufacturing because we get more capacity here, things can be done at a higher volume, more efficiently. And so as we simultaneously strengthen our national security, we're also making manufacturing cheaper here.
That's right. These pay above average, don't they, these wages? Above average in the manufacturing, especially at Nucor in the steel industry. I've seen some pretty high numbers there. These are the kind of jobs you want to have in your district, Congressman. So thank you for being a leader, with some of these, new industrial policy, I'll call it, the way we're managing trade now and the way we're thinking about things differently. Because you're right. We were for 30 years a one-way direction. Offshore, we're going to buy everything cheaper. But the reality is you can't consume your way to prosperity. You have to produce things. That's what creates wealth. That's what creates a strong nation. And the steel industry has kind of been an underlayer of all of that. I'm a manufacturer as well, and I own a manufacturing business. We buy steel and aluminum. And, we saw when tariffs were first put on them in the first Trump administration, we saw the prices pop up a little bit, but then they settled back down. And what really made prices go crazy was during the pandemic when there were shortages. And that's kind of what Chuck was saying, that as we add more supply, prices actually go down. And that's what I hear from friends of the steel industry, that when they get to more efficient capacity, they can become more competitive, right? They can have the good jobs and we don't have inflation. We're not seeing it, are we?
No, and that's a good thing too. Is what's driving that is, first of all, tax policy. And we have done some major things in tax policy to make that work out. Rebuilding our infrastructure, advancing U.S. innovation, those are kind of things that are worth fighting for in Congress, not overseas. And so it just really is working out. President Trump knows that he knows the strength of the nation is measured not by its military might, but it's by its innovation and its producing goods. Those are the things that are going to make us strong. And we do need a military presence, but we need also a very prosperous and expanding industry that's innovative in everything they do. And in doing that, we can bring about jobs for working families, which are going to be based on the fact we've done some great tax cuts and promoted, from an economy standpoint, a growing economy.
Yeah, well, how do you see? So I think those are exactly the kind of policies that we need to bring the manufacturers back. Energy policy is another big one that impacts manufacturing. I mean, how do you see your district's manufacturers fitting into America's greater industrial rebuild? You know, they're participating in that, I would assume. Getting busier?
Yes, I mean, right now I'm working with a country, North Macedonia. It's the only producer of the steel and aluminum needed to build a bus, which I think is part of the defense of our country. In Florida, we have hurricanes. We got lots of hurricanes, and when they come, we've got to move people. We can't do it without buses, and those buses are coming from somewhere else, not here. And so while we're waiting to create that, we also are knowing that we need that in order to provide the necessary components to a real growing industry. That's just one of many industries, and they're going to depend totally on steel and aluminum to be the chassis of their whole operation.
Yeah, the steel and aluminum are the input, and they become so many downstream products. And I'm glad you brought that up, Congressman. You know, as we get into how we're going to do industrial policy and how we're going to manage our trade better, you know, it's not that we're not going to have any trade at all. The problem has been that America's had these persistent, never-ending trade deficits for 30 years. It's a one-way direction. That's the problem. If it was balanced, it would be a different story. But this persistent imbalance is what we're trying to fix, and tariffs are one tool that can help that. But I know producers like the bus manufacturer and others down the line want to see tariffs not just on their inputs, not just on the steel that they buy, but on their outputs as well, so that they can enjoy the protection, so that the bus is made in Florida and not made somewhere else here. Because the way we get to balance and the way we raise our wages is by producing more of what we consume in this country. So we're ordering buses already, right? We need the buses. There's a safety need to evacuate, and they're going to buy them. We want to make sure we buy them from ourselves, and that's what these policies do. They set the table and make it appealing to buy from ourselves.
Absolutely, because our current federal infrastructure investments can't address our country's growing infrastructure needs. We have a huge growing need, and the production and so forth has lagged behind. And so that's why I introduced the bill I had, which is the Federal Infrastructure Banking Act, which allows for investors to invest in programs here that's going to build infrastructure, build innovation, build like an economy that's based on American-based businesses, not some foreign-based interests.
We are the land of opportunity. When we give the opportunity to ourselves and not to foreign producers, we enjoy it. We can have the rails and the gold too, right? We get it all together. And Chuck, how did that play out in history? We've seen this, correct? It does add up, or am I making this up?
No, that's exactly right, and that's why I'm so excited about the congressman's legislation. You know, it's a grand tradition, right? I mean, if you go back to the American system, which is really what that was launched by Henry Clay, the early 1820s, and the American system had three parts: protective tariffs, a central bank, and federal investment in public infrastructure. Those are the three things, and you need those three components. And we've had federal financing for a long time, except it's been for everybody except American producers serving the American producing market. We American taxpayers have had to fund the World Bank forever to build up other countries' domestic capacity. And if you were a domestic manufacturer, the only federal finance you could get would be as if you were chasing exports. So we had, for instance, the Exim Bank. But that led to all these bizarre situations like poor Delta Airlines faced, where we will finance Air India buying a Boeing, but we won't finance an American airline buying a Boeing. It's just completely, upside down thinking. So I'm a big fan of the congressman's legislation. It's long overdue.
Well, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We're getting close to a break. We've got another few seconds here before we get into that. I know we're going to talk about the Standards Act coming up and the Infrastructure Bank Act after the break, and how those help America's manufacturers. But anyway, I see that we've just got a few seconds left, so we'll go into break. Thank you all for being with us here on Home Talk Radio. This is the Chairman's Countdown with the Coalition for a Prosperous America, coming to you live nationwide on Home Talk Radio. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back. We're here today on the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, along with Charles Benoit. We're from the Coalition for the Prosperous America. We're coming to you nationwide live on Home Talk USA Radio Network. You can also hear us streaming on HomeTalkUSA.com, and you can check out the work of the Coalition for a Prosperous America at prosperousamerica.org. Before the break, we were talking with Charles Benoit, the Trade Counsel for the Coalition, as well as Congressman Daniel Webster, representing Florida's 11th Congressional District. And I'm so pleased the Congressman's got two great pieces of legislation up in the House right now. The first one is called the Standards Act, Leading the World, Not Following China. I mean, Congressman, this is one of these major pieces of legislation that we've been following closely at CPA. It got our attention because it connects something that's often overlooked: the technical standards to our country's economic and national security. I know about these because I'm in manufacturing. We're dealing with standards all the time on how things are produced, how metal is made, how we do testing, how we ensure the paint is good, how we ensure it holds a vacuum, etc. But I think a lot of people don't know about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the bill and what got you going on this?
Well, first of all, when the United States writes the kind of the script, it's reflective of the values we have, and in the private sector especially, it allows us to promote innovation, but if we do it our way and not China's way, to ensure that America remains a global leader and China is not. The standards developed by advancing private sector-led, consensus-based standards that allow American innovation to thrive. We can only do that when we're in charge, when we're leading, when we're the ones out in front. And so we use it to incentivize manufacturing, but we do it our way.
Yeah, it's so important. We've seen China move very aggressively to dominate these international standards bodies. And I think, people don't always know all these standard bodies. They hear about things like the World Health Organization, right? And they've heard a little bit about China having influence there. But there's so many other standards bodies like the Welding Society and, things that these are just technical standards related to everything from jet engines to welding to materials. And it's so important that we're on there. And China's been getting in these places pretty aggressively and, trying to dominate them and write the rules in a way that works for them. Besides the benefits of us setting the standards our way, what are the risks if we don't act, if we don't get control of these things?
Well, I think, for instance, the Coast Guard is wanting to build some polar ice cutters, and they've been doing that for several years. However, the initial framework for building that was thick metal, very thick metal. No one in the world knows how to weld that. And so we could let China figure that out, and who knows what would come from it, or we could go out, build our own standards, and then go find people that can do them. And that's what we've done, and we're ready to start that program. The president's been engaged in getting even other countries involved in building these polar ice cutters, because the welding of this particular metal and the thickness of it is an important part of the whole process. If someone else writes the standards, who knows what happens? Inferior product, or a product that we don't build, they build, or something else. It's just not the way to go. That's only one little teeny piece of the whole manufacturing process, but it is a standard that needs to happen. You're the one who mentioned welding, and that's certainly a very important part of putting steel together. And so my father was an expert welder, and he could weld aluminum, and he did
That's pretty hard to weld.
it is hard to weld, and he could do it, and it was an amazing thing. And he was probably the only one around that could actually do that. So if there's a leak in a pipe or something like that, it became pretty hard to fix unless you could weld it. And it's certainly a lower temperature and other things that are part of it. I don't remember all that he used to talk about, but it's just one of the things that can happen either internationally or here right at home. And we want it to happen right at home. We want to not only build the standards, but we want to build the boats or whatever else it is we want to manufacture, and we build them right here in the USA.
That makes a lot of sense, Congressman. But I always tie it back to the jobs. Those welders, those guys and girls that can weld like that, with that kind of skill, those are fantastic jobs. A lot of them are making six figures and above. So, they know the standards, they learn the standards. We want to keep control of the standards and keep the training here in America, too. So that's fantastic. I want to cover a little bit about besides the Standards Act, the Infrastructure Bank Act that you've got. This is financing America's comeback, is what they say. And, it's another big initiative we've been tracking, and it could change how we finance America's rebuilding effort. And I think this is so critical because small, medium-sized manufacturers in general, it's not been sexy, right? The trend was go offshore, and we're going to finance this IT and all these other, sexy, electronic kind of things. But manufacturing, how we make stuff, we are just desperate to get financing sources here and to help rebuild America, because as we bring the jobs back, we're going to need the factories and the equipment too. I understand it's going to create a national infrastructure bank, something we've not seen really since the Eisenhower era. Can you explain what that means for rebuilding American capacity?
Well, I think everybody knows we're not going to increase taxes. And so there's not going to be an additional monies go into the Transportation Trust Fund. As a matter of fact, it's declining for several reasons. One is more efficient product, and also the batteries and other fuels that don't use gasoline. They don't get taxed by the gallon. So what this does is actually bring in investors from out of the country or inside the country, whether it's a pension fund or a pretty rich person. They want to have a place to put their money, and they don't right now. We can give them that place, and the investment could be right here in America, and it could build the roads that we need, bridges, other things that are part of the infrastructure. All could be a part of this operation once we get it rolling.
So that's pretty interesting. Do you see this kind of as the counterpart, as the American answer to China's Belt and Road Initiative? It's a way we can rebuild at home and maybe even strengthen with the right allies abroad?
Yes, I think that matter of fact, there are people who are begging for a place to put their money, begging for an opportunity to invest in something, and nothing more secure than something in the United States of America. And I think we've got a lot of people that are very interested in being a part of that. No federal dollars, no state dollars, no local dollars, none of that goes to this. This is all privately funded.
That's fantastic, Congressman. Wow, what a unique way to do things. Thank you for thinking differently, and again, for keeping us globally competitive. I think we have to be thinking differently when we see what's going on with certain economies out in the world there with China, these other non-market economies, right? We can't just play laissez-faire, throw our hands up and let them devour our capacity and our jobs and our opportunity. We've got to get aggressive.
Well, I appreciate your interest in this program, knowing that really the key is the money. The second is the workers and others, but they'll come. As long as we get the money to invest in it, we could stop using the the general fund to fund roads and so forth. Instead, we can have a real answer, private infrastructure bank.
Well, we got to pop the break, Congressman. I just want to thank you for all your good comments. We'll be right back here on Home Talk USA.
This is the Chairman's Countdown with your host, Zach Mottl, Chairman of the Coalition for a Prosperous America. Count down with us as we explore trade, tariffs, and industrial strategy with the leaders driving America's prosperity and security.
Welcome back on Home Talk USA Radio Network. This is the Chairman's Countdown. I'm the Chairman, Zach Mottl, here with the Coalition for a Prosperous America. And before the break, we were talking with Congressman Daniel Webster from Florida's 11th Congressional District. And we talked a little bit about how there's a company called Nucor Steel operating right in his district. We're joined now by Ben Pickett, who is Executive Vice President of Nucor Corporation. I just want to say thank you to you, Congressman Webster, for all of your leadership in American manufacturing in Florida. You're really kind of at the vanguard of ideas here, bringing jobs back. And I just want to say thank you for joining us here. I know you know Ben as well, and thank you for some time with us today, sir.
Awesome. And Congressman Webster from Nucor, man, we just appreciate everything you do for American manufacturing, appreciate everything you do for Florida's 11th District. I know in Bushel and the Villages and Claremont and that whole area, our trademark metal recycling team and all the recycling elements of our company really appreciate all you do for us. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Okay, Ben. Well, that's fantastic to have that tie-in right there in your district with the congressman. You know, I'm aware that Nucor, it's America's largest steel producer, one of the most innovative manufacturing companies in the world. But what a lot of people might not realize is that Nucor is also a major employer in Florida's 11th District, in the Congressional District with Daniel Webster, who we were just speaking with. And you operate one of the most advanced rebar and steel manufacturing facilities in the Southwest. The facility near Frostproof in Marion County, it's a part of the network that's rebuilding U.S. steel capacity, creating hundreds of good-paying jobs in Central Florida and thousands across America. And, you know, this is the modern face of steelmaking, right? People might have this idea of steelmaking as dirty and hot and you know, nasty, but this is recycled, clean, electric arc. I know it still gets hot sometimes, but electric arc powered. Nucor's Florida mill alone, it's recycling 1 million tons of scrap metal every year and turning it into brand new American steel for bridges, for infrastructure, for cars. I mean, I am excited. It's pretty awesome. And Ben, Nucor has made enormous investments in Florida. What does that mean for the community and for our effort to reshore America's supply chain?
Yeah, great. Well, hey, Zach, first off to you and the Coalition for Prosperous America team, really appreciate you guys having us on today. And like I said earlier, Congressman Webster, we've adopted him down there as well, him and Congressman Franklin, you know, between our rebar mill there in Frostproof and all of our recycling assets, just so much in the Florida area. And it's a truly thank you to those guys. So, yeah, a lot going on in the Nucor family. You know, you talked about investing, and maybe I'll back up at the 10,000-foot view, Zach, for a moment. You know, Nucor, since 2017, we've invested almost $20 billion, that's B, wow. $20 billion in the American economy since 2017, right? Now, obviously, that's 2017. That's the Trump tax cuts, right? Unleashed just this massive, you know, innovative sort of American industrial revitalization for many businesses. For Nucor, it was really a chance for us to truly reinvest, right? And we did so. And it's, you know, you had actually things like Nucor Steel Florida that came up, and various other forms of our recycling assets there in Florida that were really able to truly just prosper, if you will. So yeah, a lot going on, 800 plus jobs in Florida alone. And if you recall, and you guys know this well at CPA, you know, for every one Nucor job, there's all kinds of economic analysis studies that are performed over the years that you know, for every one Nucor job, you'll have 4 or 5, sometimes 6 jobs because of that one Nucor job. And that's sort of the true multiplier effect of manufacturing jobs, and we just don't talk about it
It
enough.
has the highest multiplier of
Really,
any industry, Ben. It's the highest multiplier in manufacturing. It's above
it,
3 in
it,
most cases. Sometimes, like you're saying, 6. That's fantastic.
yeah, buddy, it is absolutely fantastic. So, what's special too about Florida, in addition to those recycling assets, trademark metal recycling, Nucor recycling, with a lot of assets there in Florida, is this micro mill concept that really is this rebar mill there in Frostproof. Incredible efficiency, right? It actually allows us to truly serve the market where we are at. And so you're truly serving that that Florida market, and I call it the Nucor Florida market, right? You really are serving that Florida market, because all the rebar that's made right there in that Florida community more or less stays in that Florida area. You're creating those operational efficiencies, unlike some of the different ways that happen around the country, and most certainly around the world. And you most certainly hit it on the head, Zach. Right? This sort of new, efficient way, not only with the micro mill, but just electric arc furnace steelmaking. Right? That allows us, to be really competitive, even with the world. As much as you have overcapacity in China, you have so much, billowing, if you will, from China and all its tentacles, that you have to have a way to really compete. And Nucor really pioneered that electric arc furnace steelmaking, and is able to compete.
You've got a technological edge there helping you with that electric arc furnace. You're getting local. You're producing for the marketplace, right down to the state, not just within the nation, but you're creating jobs for Floridians using the demand of Floridians. And it's probably a lot greener because you're not shipping this all across the world on a boat or on a truck or whatever. It's shipped, it's delivered locally. And compared to China, billowing doesn't even describe it, right? The amount of pollution.
Yeah.
Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it still doesn't come on over here. So this is the best way to make clean, modern steel in America, employing Americans. It's good jobs. But you guys, like you talked about, you made some big investments, $20 billion with the B. That's huge. You need to get a return on your investments. That's why businesses make an investment. And I think this is why people don't always understand, well, why tariffs? So why this, why that? It's about driving the investment here to America and making sure we get a return, right, Ben? Is that what you're seeing? Is that why you push for tariffs?
Listen, absolutely, and we are, we've seen these tariffs, and really, I'll keep it centered around the 232 steel tariffs, right, for some time. But when you've got really a nation economy, a nation non-market, right, access economy like China, regardless of what they may say they're a part of at the WTO, et cetera, you've got to meet that with rules-based trade. And part of tariff is ensuring that instead of competing with trillion-dollar type economies like China that want to really put, if it could, all of American manufacturing out of business, right? We make sure that we level that playing field. And so those things are vital to ensure we can still build things, make things in America again. The last thing we want to do is ask China for permission, right? Every time we want to build a road or a bridge or a massive building or a warship or a Humvee or, name anything. If you look at sort of the foundational building blocks of America, it starts and ends, in our opinion, with steel. And we've got to ensure that we continue to make and build things in America, and that's what Nucor does.
Absolutely, Ben. And what about the downstream products, right? Because we talked about all the things that get made from steel. You don't just want to have a steel mill to have a steel mill, right? And you want to have customers, don't you? How do repairs play into that?
Yeah, no, it does, and I will tell you, it's interesting. You think about Nucor, we've got 27 steelmaking facilities now, but we have over 300 operating facilities, right, or 300 locations, if you will. So almost 200 downstream product facilities. So everything from garage doors to insulated metal panels to joists to decking, right? I mean, so many different downstream products, value-add products depend on getting steel.
Yep.
Nucor ensures, as part of our steelmaking capabilities, that we can serve those markets, serve those customers, not only for the businesses that we have, for all these customers that need that steel and can produce things here in America, so the Americans have what they need.
I'm one of those downstream customers. I love it when I see Nucor steel on my certs for the metal that we buy and turn it into all kinds of products, rockets and jet engines and things.
It's clean. Zach, it's clean, and it's made with American might, and that's something we love.
I love it too. We've got one more minute. Charles, you want to make any comment real quick about how this fits together from the big picture on tariffs and steel?
Yeah, well, so my favorite innovation that we've seen from the Trump administration this year is what they've done on steel and aluminum, and now they're expanding to their other Section 232 actions. That's the inclusion round. And so, we've had members, the longtime CPA members. I'm thinking of, Liberty Tabletop here, for example, who, for all the right reasons, they've always been consumers of U.S. steel, but the traditional trade remedy laws never really worked for them, or they were just inaccessible. And so, but with the inclusion round, they're being able to get the same protection as
as the steel.
Rest of the steel.
Yeah, we want to get in and get all the products covered. Well, we'll talk more about that right after the break. We've got a quick break here. We're coming to you on Home Talk USA Radio. This is the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'll be back right after the break. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're here on Home Talk USA Radio Network, streaming across America and live at HomeTalkUSA.com. I'm Zach Mottl, chairman of the Coalition for a Prosperous America, and this is the Chairman's Countdown Radio Hour. We're joined by Charles Benoit, the Coalition's Trade Counsel, and by Ben Pickett, who's Vice President at Nucor Corporation, Executive Vice President at Nucor Corporation. Earlier on, we had Congressman Webster on the show. We've been talking about the Standards Act, the Infrastructure Banking Act. We've been talking about Nucor's investments in Florida and around the country and all the good jobs we're creating, bringing manufacturing back home. But I want to look forward a little bit in this final segment of the show and talk about what we see heading into 2026. Ben, what do you see coming next, and what would you like to see really in terms of U.S. industrial policy as we get into this new future of managed trade? USMCA is going to be on the horizon again. What's on your mind there, Ben?
Yeah, well, and USMCA is sort of on the forefront right now with things sort of kicking off with USTR and the agencies and the administration here just over the last month or so. So that'll be a key element going into 2026 that will be heavily watched by all. I think for us, if we want to really dial in on USMCA, and I think that the Trump administration is actually we're even seeing a pretty good bipartisan effort here to say, listen, this steel, right, needs to be melted and poured in the USMCA region, right, for all steel mill products, for downstream steel containing products, right, for it to be USMCA compliant. We need to see strengthened rules of origin, right, the automotive sector and other key downstream industries. Think white goods, right, think some of your various appliances. We're trying to see that there is a need to advocate for, that Fortress North America provisions, right? We need to ensure that Canada, that Mexico implement comparable tariff regimes as the U.S. has. And specifically, we got to make sure we have safeguards against all these Chinese import investment surges. I mean, you think about some of the things just even specific to Mexico right now. Foreign direct investment in Mexico, even from Chinese companies, have been increasing rapidly, right? Especially in these steel-consuming industries. We've got, industrial parks in Nuevo Leon, right, established directly between the Mexican government and the Chinese authorities as a destination for these Chinese companies. So many other different examples like that. So we've got to see those things truly getting addressed as we head into these USMCA negotiations.
Yeah, the USMCA wasn't supposed to be a backdoor for China via Mexico or through any other country or through Canada, transshipments or, again, literally opening factories. You're not the first person that told me about this. And that wasn't how it was supposed to be. That wasn't the intention. And so as we keep building our tariff walls and keep building up, the opportunity here for ourselves, we need to make sure that there's a lot of ways to game the system. These other players don't game the system. So a constant review and a rewrite to address the new, it's a live game, right? The new China that happens. We've got to
exactly think about it. If not, then we set a policy where we're taking jobs away from Americans,
That's right.
We're taking hard-earned taxpayer dollars, American dollars away from Americans. And I will tell you, I come from a small town. I was listening to Congressman Webster here a little bit ago talk about, what he's doing to really make certain that you're supporting American workers. We're bringing back American manufacturing, and that's a lot of what, Coalition for Prosperous America advocates for. But, I come from a small town where we saw textiles leave and furniture making leave and industry after industry leave. And you see what he does to these small towns across America, right? You've got hope, right? And when you don't have hope, a lot of the fabric of our communities falls apart. And so part of this effort, ensuring that we get this industrial policy right again, is to reverse a lot of those decades of issues that we really saw throughout our American community. And, businesses like Nucor, many other businesses really truly investing in these American communities is what we do more and more of.
Well, getting this right isn't just national security and good jobs, it's humanitarian too, right? This is bringing back hope for the middle swath of America that's kind of been left behind the last 30 years. It's a worker-centric trade policy. What we really want is workers to be doing better because we're making more things and they have an upward ladder of mobility. That's what's behind all these policies.
Absolutely.
And Charles, what are you seeing coming down the pipeline too? Kind of on the other side of it, I know you've interfaced with the government quite a bit. You're at Department of Commerce frequently. What do you see happening as we head into 26 on industrial policy?
Yeah, well, so I really like what we're seeing in terms of increasing focus on products by products, right? So we were just talking about furniture and lumber, and in that Lumber 232 proclamation, I really liked to see that, how it wasn't just here's a 25% one size fits all tariff for the entire supply chain, but they went all the way up to 50% on cabinets and vanities. Still a little light of the 60% that the Alabama delegation asked for, but we'll put that aside. I think that's good, and I think that's where we have to keep on going on steel. As Ben was just talking about these rules of origin and appliances, where we there's not one size fits all in tariff making. So I think they need to just keep on seeing that product by product focus and think about, okay, for this product, what's relief that works. It may or may not be what is currently available. We're excited also in the lumber. We saw specific tariffs, which is a big thing that we hope to see a lot more of compound tariffs as well, which is tariffs based on what a customs officer can actually count or weigh, as opposed to basing a tariff of a invoice from overseas supplied by the importer. So that's what we're looking for. And then just lastly, big picture. Yeah. I think the administration needs more help in Congress. That's why USMCA was so limited, is because in the first Trump administration, they had no help from Congress. Now it's not so bad, but ultimately, Canada and Mexico especially, they are very, very well versed in how DC works and U.S. trade policy, and they know how much support the administration has on any given issue. And so if the administration doesn't step up, if the Congress doesn't step in its support of the administration, that kneecaps what the administration can get done. I urge everyone in Congress to ask them, for example, in automotive, are you prepared to be outcompeted by Mexico or Canada? Well, it's not going to be Canada, but are you prepared to be outcompeted on automotive? Like Australia, it wasn't intellectual. Australia let its last car factory close down, I believe 2017, 2018, something like that. So ask your congressman, are you willing to watch the last car factory in America close down because we got outcompeted by Mexico? And if not, pick a number. Pick a number. What percentage of the car market do you believe should be serviced? And so that's how we'll get to the managed trade conversation.
Well, we keep asking those hard questions. Our goal at CPA, it's a simple one. We want to turn these good policy into good jobs, the kind we talked about with Ben and the congressman, the kind that you're referring to with these policies, and whether it's Section 232 standards, infrastructure financing, we're building a system that rewards production, not offshoring. Today's show really captured it. Congressman Webster, the Standards Act, infrastructure, bank debt, Nucor, steel, Ben, Pickett, rebuilding America's industrial base. At the Coalition for Prosperous America, we're fighting every day for American producers, American workers, and American prosperity. Thanks for being with us today on Home Talk Radio.